I've been reading this book. It's called Real Happiness. I've not read very much of it at the moment. I've only read a couple of chapters. But so far it's a pretty great book. In the first chapter, it basically goes through some studies where the people doing the studies had noticed a correlation between things like yearbook pictures and how people's lives went, and pictures from baseball cards, and then how their lives went. So basically, people who smiled in their yearbook picture were more likely to have gone on to have a better marriage or a happier life in the future from then. And it mentioned another study where the people doing the study had noticed a correlation between the entry forms that nuns wrote and the length of their lives. So basically, nuns who wrote on their entry form that they were looking forward to the joy of giving their life to God lived like 10 years longer than nuns who wrote about sacrifice of devotion sort of words. So I think basically the first chapter of the book was to demonstrate that happiness not only is an emotion but has benefits, like it has a ripple effect. It affects your life. It affects the longevity, the length of your life, and it affects your relationships. And if you have a happy starting point, you're probably going to go on to have more happiness, continue that happiness on. And the second chapter that I've been reading at the moment is basically about how we adapt to situations. So your baseline, who you are, your behaviour, your inside, who you are, your baseline, you'll revert to that, So if you go through a situation, if it could be a great situation, something amazing could happen to you, or something tragic could happen to you, after that situation, you'll adapt, you'll adapt and you'll go roughly back to your baseline, who you are. And you could work on changing your internal the way you deal with things to try and rectify that baseline if you're like always unhappy, I imagine. But yeah, basically you have a baseline, who you are. You could be a happy person and then something bad happens to you. You're going to adapt to that and bounce back and continue to be happy. Or you could be a really unhappy person and you think that getting a great job will make you happy. But then if you do get a good job after a couple of years of having that good job, you might think, I want a better job, you're going to adapt to having got that job, and then you're still going to want better. You're going to adapt, basically, to those situations. Yeah. I imagine, this isn't written in the book, but I imagine if a series of bad or good events happen to you, that would change things, because if you're a happy person and then a bad event happens to you, you might be able to adapt and bounce back from that. But if several bad things happen to you, that would be more difficult, I think. But overall, the general message that you do adapt and that your baseline, who you are, is something I can get on board with, I think. Because if you have the ability to be happy regardless of what your circumstances, then that's probably That's probably for the better. Regardless of what your car is, or your hair, or your money status, or whatever, if you're just happy throughout that, then that's probably a more satisfactory way to live. Yeah. Personally, I think I place love and happiness as like my top priorities. You know, my job and stuff like that is a lot lower down for me, because I always think like if I earned a load of money, that wouldn't necessarily matter to me if I didn't have someone to share it with and a good way to be using it. I think as a base, before all else, it's good to be happy and loving. And then other things can be added to that, and that's great. But happy and loving is like the main thing. That's like the main thing. That's the best thing to aim for.